Yeah, well.
But he left.
Check 1 2 3. Check 1 2 3 4.
All right.
right, it is 5 o'clock, and I will call this tax levy rate hearing to order. And first up, we'll have letter A, the fiscal year 2021 McCracken County real estate and tangible property tax rate. Mr. Jarnett.
Hi, thank you. So as I come to you tonight to talk about tax rates for the upcoming school year, I want to start by just assuring you that McCracken County Schools has a long-standing record of efficient operations, along with providing a wealth of opportunities for students that we increase every year. We're confident in how we optimize our resources because we like to examine various aspects of our operations regularly and see how we compare to other school districts in our region and across the state who are similar in size. Over and over, we have found that these measures of how we use our resources, we have proven that we make our dollars stretch farther than what we see in other school districts. So when we look at a group of 14 districts, including McCracken County, those that are neighbors to us or similar in size of anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 students, McCracken County, out of those 14, has the 6th lowest property rate, the highest average teacher salary, and the 3rd highest ACT composite score. That data is from the 18-19 school year, which is the most recent available on the KDE website for all those districts that we like to compare ourselves to. So you all have a copy tonight of the tax rate options that KDE has provided to us. And the state gives our district and all districts that standard choice of anywhere from the compensating rate to the 4% increase rate. That would increase our revenue by about 4%. And we know that historically, the majority of school districts in Kentucky will adopt the 4% rate. But we also know that right now it's a difficult time for our community, navigating all the issues that have come with this global pandemic. Our district has been very efficient for years, and we make the most of the resources that we have. We continue to add opportunities for students, and we're fortunate that we can maintain our operations without asking for more from our taxpayers and community at this time. If you all would like to hold our tax rate for real estate and tangible property steady at 53.8 cents per $100 of assessed value, we'll make the most of those dollars and continue to provide a first-rate education for our students. Do you have any questions about that, or would you like me to move on to B?
Go ahead.
That increase would amount to $974,225.
Yes.
Thank
you. That's due to a change in assessed value in new property added to the tax roll, but our rate would remain flat.
Yeah. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Cover B.
All right. For letter B, that is the motor vehicle and watercraft property tax rate. The state also provides an option for that. There's only one option that they give us, which is 52.9 cents per $100 of assessed value. That rate has been in place since 1993. And I don't know what else to tell you, I'm sorry. It's 52.9 cents and it's been that way for a long time, so thank you.
That increase is not included in the 974,000, or it is?
That is part of the money we'll get in the general fund, yes. And again, that's because the property values increase every year.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Jarnett? Thank you, Mr. Jarnett. At this time, do we have any public comment as far as the tax levy goes?
No, sir.
All right, Mr. Carter.
All right. With item A, the superintendent recommends keeping the prior year rate for real estate and tangible property.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation. Do I have a motion?
Motion made.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Anybody have any discussion? Mr. Shelby.
I would like for the board to consider a change. The sheriff's department gets 2.5% commission rate on what they collect. That can vary from 1.5 to 4. And I would like to ask that the board consider increasing that by 1% for 1 year, which would help our law enforcement. Our county does an excellent job in law enforcement, and they're paid anywhere from $4,300 to $15,000 less than the city of Paducah, which also does an excellent job. And that would lower, that would take $208,000 away from the $974,000. So you're looking at $700+ thousand more than we had last year. And I just feel confident that Sheriff Carter, and Mr. Taylor, you know Sheriff Carter,
Yes, sir.
I believe he would make these, I think he would use that money to increase the pay of our officers. And again, we're up almost $1 million with no tax increase. And the reason that we have the money now is we have good stewards of the funds that we receive. And in reading the statute, it's 1.5 to 4. So I'd just like for you to give that some consideration. It's not going to change much in the overall, but it would really help those officers.
Can I ask questions? Jonna, could you answer if we did something like what he's talking, we've already budgeted all of that money in our budget that's on our next agenda, how would that be affected?
It would have to come out of our contingency. I'd have to look at the numbers and see exactly what that means, but my understanding is, and Bush may want to weigh in here, but my understanding is that if you increase your percentage of commission, the sheriff's department has to be able to justify what that increase is for, and it has to be related to the collection of taxes.
I'll let you go ahead.
Go ahead. We visited this. It's been when John Hayden was sheriff, and I think when Van Newberry was county judge executive, and they asked for an increase, and we looked at it, and I think we actually paid. What's the amount that we paid?
We pay 2.5,
But what does that equal? How much money is that?
over 400,000.
Over $400,000. That's just to collect the taxes. I mean, that's pretty substantial amount of money. And I understand, and believe me, I support the sheriff's department, but I don't think we can just do that without some proof that it costs the sheriff's department $200,000 more to collect it than we're paying.
If I could say also, when the board in 2007 added a nickel to the tax rate, that added a significant amount to the sheriff's commission, and that it was not reduced at that time. So for 13 years, they have been getting even more than what they were used to.
And if you think, Stephen, like what $400,000 does in the form of payroll, I don't know what these individuals make in the sheriff's office, but it's the accounting part of it plus the collection part of it. Some people pay by check, some people come in and pay individually. Some people it's escrowed, it's paid by the bank. When we looked at it, and again, I can't tell you when it's been a number of years, we looked at it, we couldn't justify the increase at that point, and I can't even tell you who the superintendent was
Okay.
at the time. I think maybe Nan Walter was the superintendent.
Let me back up. I only am asking to consider this for 1 year. Because at the end of 1 year, it would go back to the 2.5. And then by that time, the county will have received lots of extra money from these tax increases and the found taxes of things that hadn't been evaluated prior and their insurance. So, if we could do it for that year. Now, going back to the statute, I read that this afternoon.
And I'm not prepared, I didn't look at it, I didn't know you were going to say.
The statute says, basically, if the sheriff's department is asking for more money, they have to show causation or proof. So But I'm not saying that they're asking for more. They're not. I'm asking that we consider to do that to help our law enforcement in this area. And I don't think I've ever seen in my life the need for help in law enforcement.
Look, I don't know if anybody supports the sheriff's department like I do. I mean, I know most of those guys. But, you know, the Constitution says money raised for school taxes can only be used for school purposes. Now, collecting the taxes for us, that's a school purpose. But giving anything above what's justified, I don't think that constitutionally you could meet
So
that requirement.
if the last time, did it change, Jonathan, from 1.5 to 2.5 or?
For as long as I've been.
So at what time did they present proof that it was
They
needed
couldn't,
2
they
o'clock?
couldn't, they couldn't. Oh, I don't know. That's before my time.
2.5.
It's
So
always been that way.
do you think, if it's always been that way, and you've been the attorney for quite some time, I would think that the cost of doing that, if it was justified originally, and let's say that was 15 years ago, the cost has got to have gone up. But I'm saying they're not asking, I'm asking the board to consider it. And it says nothing in that statute about the board not being able to raise that on their own.
Well, I still think you go to the Constitution. The Constitution says funds raised for school purposes, taxes, can only be used for school purposes. And
But they're
basically
using the
giving
$2.5.
$200,000 over to the sheriff's office, I don't think is a school purpose.
But
Even though they do a lot for us, I know that. That's who we call if there's an issue.
we're not handing it over. We're paying, as the statute says, just increasing the number.
Yeah,
So you see my point.
I see
I'm
your
just
point.
presenting it to everyone, and I can't think of, we pay the highest, is Mr. Jordan was saying, we pay teachers better than most any place around. And I think, not to be cruel, but I think the reason we do is we want the best teachers.
Yeah.
And I think the McCracken County Sheriff's Department is one of the best in this area. And I just believe that somebody now making less than a starting teacher deserves the help, because while our great SROs are taking care of our children at school, and let's say that's 8 hours, there's 16 more of those same kids that are being protected by the sheriff's department. So anyway, that's all of my sermon.
I'm just telling you, setting your code without researching it, I think what we did a few years ago. I think they would have to justify that. I mean, you're spending state school or school taxes for something other than a school purpose. I don't think it would pass the constitutional test. And as your attorney, that's what I would advise you. Do I support the sheriff's department? Absolutely. And, I just don't.
I think it would be prudent to look at doing a work session at some point where Mr. Bradley could research it a little bit more.
Yeah, I
And-
still have
but-
that work that I did, Steve.
Yeah.
And I apologize. If I'd
No,
known.
no, no,
it
no,
was
no,
gonna
I
come
just,
up, I would've been ready.
with everything going on in the world, I just think that, I think those people deserve more than they're getting paid. And they're helping us, which does protect and could be that. I would be interested in when that 2.5% was set. And then I would be interested in seeing the cost of living each year since that. And I can't imagine that the folks at the sheriff's department has less of a cost of living than the general public. So if they came in with that kind of proof, maybe. But my point was, I just thought it would be something nice. We're gonna get $1 million extra here. And I'm talking about 200,000. But I understand.
Yeah.
And I hope everybody understands. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Shelby.
Thank you for your time, everyone.
Yes, sir. And I agree with Ms. Walker. Mr. Bradley, if you can maybe do some research, and if we need to have a work session, I think that would be a good thing to have, and get the thoughts and the statutes and the Constitution, and see exactly what that holds and what we can do and can't do, and go from there. Anybody else have anything? So I've
If we
got
have
them.
extra money, I'd like that money to go towards a welding program at the high school. If we have extra money, I think there's all kinds of things that we don't have now that we've been working on that we can also consider.
Absolutely.
I agree with that, and social distancing items.
Okay, I've had a motion, I've had second, and we've had discussion. Anything else? All in favor of applying the superintendent's recommendation for the fiscal year 2021 McCracken County real estate intangible tax, keeping the rate at 52.3%. All in favor by aye?
53.8.
53.8, I'm sorry. 53.8, all in favor by aye? Aye. Any opposed? Motion is passed. Mr. Carter.
In regards to item B, the superintendent recommends levying the motor vehicle and watercraft taxes at a rate of 52.9 cents per $100 of assessed value for the fiscal year 2021.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second,
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor for the fiscal year 2021 McCracken County motor vehicle and watercraft tax rate to stay the 52.9%. All in favor by aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is passed. Anybody else have anything? We will stand adjourned till 5:30. Thank you.
I mean, did we already, we didn't do
No,
it, did
we
we?
didn't do it.
Are you growing a mustache?
No, it's just laziness.
How's Angela? Did she, I saw, she
Yeah,
okay?
one's okay and one we don't know yet, but I think it's gonna be okay.
Yeah, that's what I told her. It's like, as nice as it is, sit it out in the front lawn. I mean,
There's a Methodist church down by my store,
uh-huh.
and that's what they do. They're all out in the parking
Breedland
lot.
Baptist does it too. They
Yeah.
all take their chairs and I guess they're having Bible studies, but they all have their bag chairs in the lawn. I think it's, yeah.
Put out a mat and
As soon as we do, we plant it, it'll rain.
It is 5:30 and I will call the September board meeting to order. If you would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, guys. First up, we got recognition of guests. Ms. Culp, glad you could be here with us tonight.
Thank you. Thanks so much for all you do for providing an opportunity for visitors to speak, first off. And as president of NCEA, I want to express my thanks for the efforts that the board and administration have made to assist staff members who might find themselves inadvertently affected by COVID-19. On July 16th, the board unanimously passed a resolution to grant additional sick leave for COVID-19 pandemic, which stated that as approved by the superintendent or assistant superintendent, additional sick leave may be granted to employees on a day-by-day basis as needed for reasons related to the COVID-19 pandemic. As a board, I know that you were excited to provide this kind of relief to teachers who were worried about what a possible quarantine might mean for their bottom line, especially if their sick days were few in number. As teachers, we were excited to hear the news, and those teachers who were present at that board meeting that night left here believing that this additional district leave would be applied as the initial source of coverage for days missed because of COVID-19 quarantine or sickness. You may have believed that too. The flow chart that resulted from the resolution tells a very different story, and I urge you to take a closer look at the employee leave options. The additional district leave is not available in most cases until all other forms of leave have been exhausted, including emergency, personal, and sick leave. Thank you for your time and your continued support of students and the staff of McCracken County Schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Culp. Next, we need to approve, number one, we had to approve the minutes for the August 20th meeting, and I think Ms. Burking, you were not present, so I just need a motion and a second to approve those minutes.
Make that motion.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Minutes are passed. Monthly financial report, Mr. Jarnett.
On the financial report tonight, I wanted to point out to you that this, of course, is for August, the prior month. And so you'll see that our level of expenditures is more normal. As a reminder, in July, we just have a payroll for our year-round staff because our teachers get paid 2 times in June. So that's why there's a significant increase if you're comparing month to month. Our audit is getting very close to being finished. I have a draft financial statement or financial reports from the auditor. And so the audit committee, which is Ms. Burkeen and Ms. Walker, I'll be getting in touch with you in the next week probably to schedule a date for you all to have a chance to review that in advance of the October board meeting. We will be able to bring that to you in a final form. Any questions about the financial report? Okay, thank you.
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to approve the monthly financial report?
motion made.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Monthly financial report is approved. recognition of personnel actions. Mr. Carter had asked that we put those into the agenda. No board actions needed. Going on to other reports. Mr. Carter? you want-
I will talk a little bit about attendance during the superintendent's report.
Okay.
But just know through this year, the attendance report will not look like they traditionally have because it's all based upon participation and not average daily attendance and average daily membership like it has been probably for the last 28 years since, CARE was enacted. However, there's still some infinite campus issues on recording it and duplication because it's based upon participation. And again, with students being in person, virtual, when you click it, it's lagged a day and then it's not uploading properly. So we're working through all of those, but I will have kind of an in-person versus virtual number that I'll give in my report here in a little bit.
Yes, sir. Next, we'll do instruction with Mr. Selinsky.
Yes, good evening. I want to bring some good news to you guys this evening. Lots of changes in the spring and how we did school. Obviously, lots of changes this fall in how we did school. One thing that hasn't changed is the academic performance of our students and the teachers that lead them. So I want to bring you some results this evening from our advanced placement test that we took this past spring, and give you some perspective about what our staff and what our kids are doing in spite of all of the COVID changes that they're required to face. So let me start with a number. We had 59% of our students pass AP exams this past spring, which I think is phenomenal, given the fact in 2019, 63% of our students passed exams. So we had a slight drop, 4% drop from one year to the next. But I would like to note that that's on 3/4 of a school year, essentially. And so 2020, 59% passage rate. I will tell you that is 10% higher than how our students performed in 2016. So we are still making some great academic gains in spite of all the things that are going on in our world and in our schools. I'll give you an example of a content area. We'll take biology, for example. This year, 73% of our students passed the biology exam. The national average was 68%, higher than the national average there. Pick out another category. This one is English language. 63% of our students passed, again, national average 62%. So we're right there and above. And I bring this to you tonight because we hear lots of things. And sometimes what we miss is still how well our students and our staff produce in spite of all the things that they have to juggle. I'll give you one more, and that's human geography. And this one is for a purpose. 53% of our students passed the exam this year, which is well below, it's below the national average of 58%. But I want you to know that that's fresh taking that exam. Across the country, it's not freshmen taking the exam. It happens to be that in our school because that's the curriculum that we offer to freshmen. So I want you to know from grades 9 through grades 12, our kids are performing. And they continue to perform because that's the excellence that we've got in our district. So I thought that would be a nice break, a 5-minute break from most of the discussion that we've had over the last 6 months to give you some good positive results of student achievement. All of our other exams were put on hold. Mr. Carter's going to talk probably about ACT scores in his superintendent report. So all of the other spring exams we were exempt from this past year. This one we still took. The ACT we still took. And you're going to see that those numbers still continue to impress. So any questions for me in that area?
No, sir.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Mr. Jackson, I guess you're going to do maintenance and facilities.
Yes, good evening. We have been working, and it's finally complete, the mobile classroom Reedland Elementary, mowing the new sign at Lone Oak Elementary. The electric was finished to that. And I'm sure you guys have heard, we've had some AC issues at Lone Oak Elementary. They yesterday completed, it's a bypass to take the heat exchanger out to fix it so we can keep the air running. They did that yesterday. This morning, a fuse blew on a little pump. The temperatures were up early, replaced the fuse, we brought the temperatures back down. So Lone Oak Elementary is good. They're fixing the heat exchanger, so we'll be ready for heat when that does come, which it may be coming pretty soon. Hendron Playground, this morning, well, let me back up. Mr. Pulaski with Kenny's Landscape and more has taken on the task of helping us with that. The company that we had scheduled to do that before kept pushing the date on us. That's why it wasn't done when it was supposed to be done. So we finally had to let them go. And Mr. Pulaski stepped up and said, I've got obligations, but I'll come every day after work and get it done for you. And he's been doing that, working till dark. This morning, we, to help him out, rented a couple skid steers and moved a ton of mulch for him. He said he'll have it done today. If not today, it'll be first thing tomorrow morning. So we'll be good. And then the Heath Elementary mobile unit, they were out today setting it up, putting it together. They said by noon tomorrow, they'll be tied down and complete. And I've got plumber, electrician, all that ready to roll. They should be in there tomorrow as well. So those are moving along. Any other questions? Any questions, I should say?
No, sir. Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you.
Mr. Carter, you gonna do the superintendent report?
Yes.
Thank you.
I put together just kind of a brief PowerPoint that I'll go over, and I'll send it to you all after the meeting, if you like. I'll go ahead and start kind of with the hot topic that we have right now is Edgenuity. And I know there's a lot of questions and, concerns, debate about this. And as we said from the very beginning, there is no substitution for in-person instruction. There is no doubt that, what our students get from our teachers is better than anything we can do. However, what we did here was what we did last spring was not acceptable. There was not enough rigor. So we reached out to find a program, and the initial intent of the Edgenuity program was to replace another program that we had that we utilized at Open Campus that had very limited capacity on subjects and content. And in particular, there was no CTE offering. So if a student was sent to an alternative school, there was no way that you could guarantee to match up their high school courses with alternative schools. So the initial onset of this was for that purpose. So, and somebody's asked about the expense, and we were able to get this program for less than what we were paying for the previous program. One thing that's important to note with Edgenuity is the accreditations that it brings. As you can see, that it's accredited by SACS, by Advanced Ed, by Schools of Accreditation and School Improvement, the Northwest Accreditation Commission, and the NCAA. So it will also clear the clearinghouse requirements for college. Not all online programs have that capability. So, we have to expect the best, but we also have to be prepared for the worst. And what we're dealing with a worldwide pandemic is the worst. And we understand that and we recognize that. This is a tool, much like a textbook and a workbook. This is a tool that can be utilized. And there's been, some concern about the use of that. I also want to note that, we started school a month earlier than a recommendation from our governor. And with that being said, we have to be prepared in case our county numbers or we have an outbreak in a school and we have to shut that down. So our students have to know how to utilize this program and moving forward. So that was the point of going with that. And also there's over 80 school districts in the state of Kentucky that are utilizing this online program. And I've listed just some of the ones, Murray, Graves County, Hardin County, Shelby County, Newport Independent, Henderson County, Warren County, Bowling Green Independent, Bullitt County. A lot of these districts that perform about the level that we do academically. So, I mean, there is merit to it. It is different. It is new. It is difficult. And when I say it's new, it's not just new for our students. It's new for our staff. It's new for our administration. And there's going to be learning curves, that we're going to have to work through. And we're doing that. And we're listening to those things. But much like the pandemic itself, we're having to adjust and adapt regularly, and sometimes quickly. With that being said, which I've asked of administrator, I ask of teachers, I ask of parents, I ask of students, we have to have patience and grace for one another right now. This is not about McCracken County Public Schools, what we're dealing with. This is about McCracken County. This is about the Commonwealth of Kentucky. This is about the United States. So it is different. It is painful. And it's not anything that anybody wants. What we want is to ultimately get back to how it was on March 12th. I honestly don't know if we'll be able to get there. But that is our goal, and we're going to work towards that. But in the same breath, we cannot lose another 9 weeks of instruction for our students like we did to some degree in the spring. Now we have some pockets that did exceptionally well. And honestly, we have some students, I had a conversation with Mr. Boland this morning, that we're going to have to crank up our home visits because they've not done very much with it. And how we know that is this is a sample report that you can get from Edgenuity. And what this shows, a lot of times students will say, well, I was logged on. So in week 1 for this student, it actually shows you how long the computer was on the program. And then it also shows idle time. So for instance, student right here, and we have to calculate it by hand. They were logged on for 13 and a half hours. 8 hours of that time was idle, which means there was no mouse movement or no keystrokes. So that for the first week, somebody can say they were logged on for hours, but they only were actively engaged for 5.5. That's there. I mean, yes, there's videos you have to walk through, and you have to, navigate, and you cannot fast forward, you can't skip, and that is, I will say, a flaw. So for those students that know that information, it becomes tedious and troublesome for them. We've got tickets in for those type of things to see if there's a way we can go through it. I know there's questions about partial credit and some of those. Again, that's no different than, I will go back to the traditional way of teaching with a workbook. If people got a workbook and a student missed a question, it was up to the teacher whether or not they gave partial credit or not. Same concept. It's technology based. But again, I know there's been a lot of debate, a lot of discussion. I know I've received my fair share of emails. I'm sure you all have too. And we read those and we share those concerns. And we'll agree it's not what's best. But on the same token, we've already had one school that we shut down for 2 weeks because we had multiple positive cases. We've had one class that we've had to shut down because of cases. And if we're going to try to remain and open up in person, those things are going to happen. And when those happen, we have to be prepared to provide instruction for our students in a meaningful way. But we also have to understand that we are asking a lot of our teachers. We're asking our teachers to navigate and juggle both virtual instruction and in-person instruction. And when you might, to the layperson, they might think that's an easy task. It's not, because we have staff who are dedicated and devoted and concerned about the well-being of their students, both academically and emotionally. And there's extended stress on everybody moving forward with this. And we recognize that. And we've got to go back to the patience and grace. I know the central office leadership team probably gets tired of hearing me say those type of words, but that's where we're at. We will not get back to March 12th without that. In-person versus virtual numbers. I sent you all a report early on. Our numbers have shifted about 5% since the start of school. So initially we were about 80-20. I think it was probably more accurate, 78-22. But I just ran these on Monday. And so you can see that we have about 73% in person district-wide and and 27% that are virtual at this point. So that is about a 5% shift to virtual instruction. And it's kind of reflective, again, throughout all of our schools. They're all pretty consistent where they're at. There wasn't maybe a 1 or 2% at each school, but it was 5% overall district-wide. All right, something new that we just found out about this week. There's going to be a new self-reporting form that we're required to submit to the Kentucky Department of Public Health, and this will be the form that we will utilize. We've kind of come up with a plan to do this, so it will be reported by school to the state daily, Monday through Friday. So that information will be sent daily from schools to Ms. Willett, who so graciously volunteered to take this task on. And she will upload that. So every day at 1:30, our schools will be sending, new student positive, staff positive, and here's where it gets more common, student quarantine and staff quarantine numbers. So they will update those new numbers daily, and it'll get uploaded. So these numbers will be a little bit different than the numbers that you see on the Kentucky Department of Public Health. So if you go on to that website now, you'll see this reporting form, and it's lagged. It's not, right now it shows that we have 10 active staff cases, and that's not accurate. This will be more accurate. I can honestly say I'm not sure why the school's doing that, but it is something that we're required to do, and we're going to do that to be transparent. And one thing with this we have to report whether the student. We don't report if the student is in person or virtual. We just report a student is. So it's going to be somewhat misleading. If parents want to use this, there's going to be some details. So if we have 4 students who are virtual who report to us that they've tested positive, all we enter is 4. So it's not going to, be reflective of that. So that's something that is important to know. And one thing that came out of this that the public and community needs to know is this emergency regulation requires that parents report to schools within 24 hours if their child is tested positive. So that's where we get the information from. We enter that, and then we have to confirm that with public health. So it is going to be interesting. This is something that is new that will begin on September 28th, because that is, the date that the state Department of Public Health has said that we need to begin doing this. So we'll have things in place to practice that. The other piece that comes along with that is a new color chart that explains based upon where your incidence rate is for your county. So you got green, yellow, orange, and red. And there are recommendations that go along with each one of those levels. Of course, green naturally, it's full go, no issues. Yellow and orange, you need to start taking precautions. And right now, McCracken County is in the orange category. So that's why, we have been, we were yellow for a little while, but we moved to orange and been there for a while. And that is why, we're using our AB schedule. I would like to transition to, more full capacity after fall break, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. But the one thing that they are recommending, again, if the county is red, that you go all virtual until the county rate gets back to yellow. Now, that was just kind of a blanket statement. We're still asking for guidance on that about let us work with our local health department to make those decisions and not make it a kind of a directive, simply because if you have an outbreak, let's say in a jail or a nursing facility, and that spikes your county numbers, that may not be a direct impact or direct reflection of what's going on within your school community. So, we're working through that. But this is something that's new again, that again is about the positivity rate. And I'll talk about McCracken County's positivity rate here in a few minutes. Just a COVID update as it relates to McCracken County Public Schools. Since August 1st, we've had 18 positive staff members come through that. and go through the quarantine and isolation process. And there's so many different words that I think and I'm as guilty as anyone about using those wrong. I mean, there's quarantine, there's isolation, there's positive. So just because somebody is quarantined does not mean they were positive. And just because we close down a classroom doesn't mean they're quarantined. The quarantine designation comes from the health department, not from the schools. So, there's that plays into this a little bit as well. We've had 8 positive student cases reported since August 24th. And what I can say about those 8, again, one was actually virtual prior to the start of the school year. The other 7 were two distinct groups that we're able to pinpoint how it came about. So, there's on top of the health department doing contact tracing, we have to do contact tracing ourselves, and it's very detailed. When we had those cases, again, the building principals will send an email, within 24 hours of us finding out. Our principals have been sending them out the day that we've been finding that out. Because again, we want to share that information as quickly as possible and be upfront about it. But those 7 cases, and I believe all of those students have already done their 14 days and have been cleared to come back. I have a weekly phone conference with local health officials, other school districts, and the Purchase District Health Department where we sit back and we look at, our incidence rate, what it looks like, what the trends look like, how the information is going. And this is something I looked at today, the 7-day incident report. The incident report is probably the most accurate thing we have for schools because we still cannot get from the state, and I've asked for this for about 2 months now. I've asked for a county positivity rate, but labs do not have to report negative numbers based on county, so they cannot get the denominator to give us those accurate rates. So the most accurate we have is the incident rate over the past week, and they update those daily. So and I check these daily. On Monday, McCracken County had a 12.4 7-day incident rate. Today, we were at 16.6. So that's a trend that is going the wrong direction for us. Now, that still keeps us yellow because if you go, going back to this chart, orange is pretty much 10 to 25. So, below 10 is yellow, 0, of course, is green. But when you get above 25, that's where you get to red. But so we're at 16.6. But what alarms me is we're at 4.2 in 4 days. So, that does fluctuate a little bit. So I'm hoping when I look at it tomorrow, it's going the other direction. But we'll continue to look at it. As far as return to school, we're examining a potential full capacity return to school after fall break. But there's things that we have to continue to consider in exploring that option. One is the status of the county COVID rates. We don't want to be the cause of an outbreak. We do not want to be the conduit for that. And again, as a school, we're a microcosm of our community. So, if what type of rate we have in the community, more than likely we'll have within our school. Again, and we don't want to do that. What is going to be our ability to keep social distancing? That is one of the aspects along with masks. The mask is the easy piece to do because you can see it. But, but humans are just naturally, they're creatures of habit and gathering. And that's a hard thing to break because we want to be around one another. But again, that's just what science has shown, that, the mask, the hygiene, and the social distancing will help deter this. Virtual instruction is continuing to be around 25% for our students. So, we have to, make sure we can still accommodate a quarter of our students. And then, remediation opportunities. On top of, the hybrid schedule we've been dealing with for the last 3 weeks, which by that point would probably be about 5 weeks, we also have to remember we had a 9-week loss in the spring. So, our goal was to see our students as much as humanly possible, whether it be in the classroom, whether it be in extracurriculars. And I can't say enough. I had the opportunity the other night, our band was out and had, instead of having marching marks like they would normally do for the routines, they had marks for being 7.5 feet apart, unless you played a trombone, and they were 10 feet. And they went a little extra above that. So again, we want to get back to school as soon as possible, but it's got to be safe. We've got to be able consciously to be safe with that. And I know there's some people that are not happy with that. But we have to be able to do it safely. And we're going to continue to work as diligently as we can to provide as safe a learning atmosphere for our students as we can. And we can't waver on that. Now, some highlights I want to make sure we go over, though, because I like to end on good news. We have senior Mason Wooten, who's been named a 2021 National Merit semifinalist this year. If you remember, last year we had actually 2 finalists. But one thing I want to point out about that, we have had a National Merit semifinalist every year at McCracken County High School. That is unbelievable. That is a sign of excellence and a standard that is tough to match. Most high schools get excited if they have one every couple of years. Our standard is we want to have one every year, if not more. And we had 2 finalists last year. McCracken County High School's Culinary Arts Program, again named the Sullivan University's High School Programs of Distinction. And that used to be called the Elite 50, which is a national award. And I believe this is their 3rd year in a row. Genevieve and Bruce have also secured another COPS grant that we just received a notification on for $145,000 to be utilized for upgrading security systems in all of our schools. Lone Oak Middle School and Reno Middle School each received $7,500 in Americans Farmers Grow Rural Grant, and these funds will be utilized to improve greenhouses and our outdoor learning spaces at those 2 middle schools. In another piece, we looked at our ACT scores from last spring, and we had a 20.6 composite average. And again, I want to point out what that means is the average student at McCracken County High School is college eligible. That's almost 2 points higher than the state average. And that was still accomplished, again, given the fact that we were dealing with the pandemic and the quick shutdown that we had. But, our students and staff still work diligently, and it's reflected by the AP scores and their ACT scores. So, any questions?
Yes. So you were talking about all the factors that you're going to consider for going back to school after fall break. When are you going to determine what those factors are? I know that teachers probably will want to plan. I know that families will need to plan.
Well, tomorrow we'll spend a lot of time. We've been talking about that already. Hopefully by middle of next week, by next Wednesday, we can release a definitive timeline. And the one thing at that point that would be contingent upon, honestly, would be our county numbers, our rates, and then if we have any new cases within our schools, could impact that. But I think being able to shut down by restructuring our bus routes and how we've done things, we'll be able to shut down just small pieces throughout the county if we have to, because again, what we've seen is most of the positive situations have occurred outside of school and not been brought in. But the one thing that we have to be cognizant of, if we come back full, quarantine will get us. Quarantine will happen, because right now, those 7 cases that we have had at the school, nobody was quarantined, because when we showed the maps and they came in and measured, everybody was masked and over 6 feet apart. That probably will not be possible in all of our classrooms when we come back, even at 80% or 75%. So that we'll have some classrooms and that's one of the things that has shifted here recently. that it used to be you had to wear a mask if you couldn't maintain 6 feet. Then it was, well, you wouldn't be quarantined if you had a mask on within 6 feet. But as of today, the quarantine is the 6 feet doesn't matter. You would still be asked to quarantine if you're in close contact with someone for more than 15 minutes, which that 15 minutes, again, just found out today, has shifted from a one-time interaction to an all-day interaction. And prior to this meeting, I got an email that said, one health department said that 15 minutes is 15 minutes over 48 hours if somebody tests positive. So it keeps getting more and more challenging. However, we're going to step up to that challenge, and we're going to do everything we can to get our students back in full capacity after fall break.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So my question would be, the 7 positive cases that we have experienced at the high school. It's my understanding that, according to the health department, none of those cases were where the contact tracing said that nothing was, they didn't get it at school.
Correct.
So doesn't it seem with that and the fact that Grays County has only had 1, Frank Marshall's at 2, that these children could be safer at school than they are at home or out in the public in general? Tell me if I'm wrong. One of the situations was a boyfriend, girlfriend, and the girlfriend's best friend.
That's pretty accurate.
Another one was the mother, or the daughter of a mother that had COVID. Anyway,
Yeah.
my point is, the parents are ready for these kids to get back to school, and that's a valid argument that they're safer at school than they are in public because of the actions that the system has done. The incredible job.
Yeah, I mean, we're confident in our plan. However, again, there's, our size is a little bit different than many. But again, our goal is going to be to get everybody back full capacity after fall break.
Anybody else have anything for Mr. Carter? Thank you, Mr. Carter. All right, moving on to the Board of Education. Did anybody have anything they would like to talk about or any questions? Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. You guys have had a chance to look at the consent agenda. Does anybody have any questions or would like to pull anything out of the consent agenda tonight? All right, I just need a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda.
Motion made.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor by aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda is passed. Letter B, 2020-21 McCracken County School Working Budget. Mr. Jordan.
You all have a copy of the budget, and I just wanted to go over some highlights with you. We are in the 3rd part of that budget approval process right now. You'll remember that it begins in January each year with the draft budget, and then in May, you all approve a tentative budget for the upcoming school year. And here we are in September, and so it's time to approve the budget for the current school year. With the audit being ahead of schedule this year, we were able to use our final numbers from the prior year ending balance to apply into the budget for the beginning balance for this current year budget. Sometimes that has to be adjusted a little bit, but those numbers are final at this point. The beginning balance figure is really crucial for us for operating until our local tax collections start to come in the fall. So we need that for cash flow. So I just like to point that out to you. Sometimes it looks like a big number, but it's something that we use and we spend down considerably before the school taxes begin to come in. I shared with you earlier in the spring about the interest rates for our bank account, and that's tied to the Fed funds rate, which of course has been dramatically impacted by the pandemic. You'll see that we have significantly reduced our anticipated earnings on investments. Hopefully things will turn around and that will go up and it'll be a good, nice surprise for us. But we think it's important to budget conservatively for that because we just don't know for sure how things will turn out. We've used that prior year tax rate for budget purposes in anticipation of you all voting that way tonight. I do my own SEEK calculation for budget purposes because we have more up-to-date data at the district level than what KDE has at the time they put that SEEK forecast out. As far as our expenses go, we've budgeted based on our employee raises this year and used our historical numbers for our other operating expenses. We have lowered the contingency budget a little bit to help account for what we think will be a more expensive year in substitute costs because of the pandemic and teachers and classified staff being out for quarantine and isolation and illness. And also as a result of the additional expenses that we're having related to the pandemic. Now, you know that we've talked about FEMA and we're very hopeful that we'll be reimbursed for a lot of these things through FEMA, but that is a slow process and it's just unknown yet how much will be approved for and what specific items will be approved for. So we're still working through that process. So we thought it was important to be conservative on that as well. Our contingency in this budget is a little over 3%. The state mandates a 2% contingency. If some of these unknown things are not as drastic as we anticipate they be, then our contingency will wind up being higher by the end of the year. One big thing I like to point out to you each year is that you'll see, as you look at that budget, there are 3 columns of numbers. It shows you on the far right is our budget for this current year, and the 2 columns to the left of that are the prior year, the prior 2 years. And you'll see in those columns, if you just scroll, kind of scan down there, that we have revenues and expenses budgeted in a line item called on behalf payments. And just as a reminder, that is the amount of money that we record through the audit process each year that the state pays on our behalf for our employee benefits, which includes part of the teacher's retirement contribution and health insurance and life insurance payments for our employees who are paid with state and local dollars. So that is not a cash transaction. It's just recorded through a journal entry during the audit process. And KDE began recommending years ago that districts not budget for that. So that's why we don't. We continue to follow that KDE guidance. If you will look to the last 2 or 3 pages of the budget, you'll see those budgeted totals for each fund. And with your approval, this budget is ready to submit to KDE.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Jarnett? What's the superintendent's recommendation?
Superintendent recommends the adoption of the proposed working budget for the school year 2021 based on anticipation receipts and expenditures.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation. Do I have a motion and a second?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor by aye or any discussion? All in favor by aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Working budget is passed. Thank you. Letter C, board member to serve on the 2021-22 school calendar committee.
Any volunteers?
Any volunteers?
I'll do it.
Ms. Watson? Thank you. All right, letter D, board member to serve on the 2021 local planning committee.
Yes.
I'll do it.
Oh, you too.
About
Super
that.
easy.
All right,
We'll have about 4 to maybe 5 meetings. We're gonna try to have our first one in October. We'll let you know just as soon as we know.
That will work.
Thank you.
Unless someone else wants it. You did last time.
That was easy.
You're good. It wasn't bad.
Yeah.
Fine. You'll do fine.
Do you have anything else, Mr. Jackson? You good? Okay. All right, letter E, request for permission to allow Heath Elementary School PTSO to fund and install playground equipment.
Yes, Heath Elementary School, PTSO, would like to purchase and install some playground equipment in their playground. Mr. Cooper sent me the description and kind of told me what he wants to do. The install will be by the school, but it'll be supervised by the manufacturer of the playground equipment. It is going to be playground structure, set of swings, and a spinning seat that's ADA compatible. And the manufacturer says typically they can install this in a weekend. So I think they're gonna try to get a group together and install this over the weekend. It's right at $34,000 for the structure and $3,000 to $4,000 for install. So they are asking your permission if they could do this on their own, supervised by the manufacturer, to install this playground, purchase and install this playground equipment at Heath Elementary School.
Mr. Jackson, have you received the specs for that to make sure that they are the playground equipment is income with school playground guidance?
I have not, but I will. The game time, the company Playcore that's coming from, most all of their stuff is, but I will double check first. Absolutely.
Do we need to make the motion contingent on if it meets the guidelines?
Do they have a timeline?
He said from time of order, it takes 4 to 5 weeks to come in. And I'm not sure, he didn't tell me for sure if he was gonna order tomorrow, if you approve, or if there was some time.
We can do it contingent. We'll do it contingent.
I'd go ahead with that.
As soon as you see that it complies, then it starts,
Yes,
not another
Right.
board meeting.
correct.
Right.
Yeah, I'm good.
Absolutely.
And I guess that company has liability insurance and all that good stuff. Okay. But you don't see a problem with that, Mr. Bradley?
No, sir.
Okay. Anybody else have anything for Mr. Jackson? What's the superintendent's recommendation?
The superintendent recommends allowing Heath Elementary School PTSO to fund and install playground equipment contingent upon meeting the guidance required for school playground equipment on property.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation. Do I have a motion and a second?
Motion made.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor by aye? Any opposed? Motion is passed. Do I have a motion and a second for the orders of the treasurer?
Motion to accept the orders of the treasurer.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor by aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Orders of the treasurer are passed. No executive session tonight, Mr. Carter, is that correct? Need a motion and a second to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor by aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.